NBA, like, we are all crazy. We're all psychotic, right? The only way to be one of the 450 players in the world and stay there, you are physically gifted.
Rodman seems normal.
Well, you're physically gifted and you're also a little psychotic. But yeah, your teammates know. There's guys that reek like alcohol.
Sure.
There's guys that are, throwing up at halftime. Like, the league has changed, but it used to be even more crazier. When you're 25, we could stay out till 5 a.m. and rage and then go score 30.
When NBA legend Richard Jefferson scored 39 points after a night he described as involving 25 shots of tequila, an entire dance team, and a 6 a.m. bedtime, it completely challenges the way fans imagine professional basketball players live off the court. While most people picture NBA athletes as highly disciplined professionals who sleep early, eat perfectly, and follow strict routines, Jefferson's story reveals a very different reality from a previous era of the league. As a 17-year veteran, Olympic medalist, NBA champion with the Cleveland Cavaliers alongside LeBron James, and a player who competed in over 1,100 games and scored nearly 15,000 points, Jefferson isn't telling rumors. He's sharing live experience from inside the locker room culture of his time. His Toronto story, where a simple night out before a back-to-back game reportedly turned into a wild late-night experience, highlights how extreme NBA nightlife could get, yet somehow players still performed at an elite level the very next day. It raises a bigger question about what truly separates NBA players from everyone else. Not just talent or preparation, but the rare ability to live two completely different lives and still dominate when it matters most.
One girl walks by and it said like crazy. She had a shirt on that said crazy bitch. And I see another girl walk by. Now, again, I'm not calling these women bitches.
Now, most players will be completely finished, cooked, drained, and barely able to walk, let alone compete at an NBA level. But this is exactly where the separation between ordinary athletes and elite professionals becomes obvious. The very next day, Richard Jefferson doesn't just show up, he explodes. Despite everything that happened the night before, he steps onto the court and delivers a high-level performance that turns what should have been exhaustion into dominance. It's the kind of moment that forces you to question everything you think you know about recovery, discipline, and what it actually takes to perform in the NBA night after night.
Oh no, it's we're the Toronto Raptor dance team. This is like our Christmas party.
39 points. After 6 hours of sleep. After 25 shots of tequila. After an entire night spent with a dance team. Long after most players would already be completely depleted. That's the moment Richard Jefferson shows what separates elite NBA athletes from everyone else. Because instead of being slowed down by the chaos of the night before, he steps onto the court and turns exhaustion into production, delivering a 39-point performance that defies logic, recovery norms, and everything people think they understand about professional sports.
Bartender, can I get 25 shots immediately?
One of them texted him later, not to celebrate, not to argue, but just to acknowledge what had happened. Because when a player goes out, stays up until 6 a.m., drinks heavily with an entire dance team, sleeps only a few hours, and still comes back the next night to drop 39 points against elite competition, there's no real explanation that fits conventional logic. It's the kind of story that spreads quietly through locker rooms and gets repeated for years, not because it's glamorous, but because it breaks the normal understanding of what fatigue is supposed to look like at the highest level of basketball.
Got him extremely drunk. I probably go to bed at like 6 a.m.
That's the NBA nobody talks about, the ability to function at an elite level while living like a complete maniac. But Richard Jefferson wasn't done revealing just how deep that culture went. When he was asked whether his teammates could tell when he was hungover or coming off a wild night, he didn't dodge it or soften the answer. Instead, he made it clear that in that era of basketball, appearances mattered far less than performance. As long as you showed up and produced when the lights came on, the rest of it was your own private chaos. And that's what made that generation so different. The line between discipline and destruction wasn't as clean as people think, and somehow, players still found ways to dominate on the court no matter what had happened the night before.
The next day, I have one of my greatest games. I had like 20 points in the first half and end up with like 39 that game.
Then he went further. Jefferson made it clear that in that era of the NBA, it wasn't just about whether teammates could tell. It was about whether they even cared. The standard wasn't perfection, it was production. You could come off a night with no sleep, a blurred memory of the previous evening, and still be expected to perform at an elite level once the game started. And if you did, Nobody asked questions. That was the unwritten rule. In his telling, the league operated on a simple understanding. Whatever happened before tip-off stayed private, as long as you delivered when it mattered. And that contrast with today's NBA, where every detail is tracked, managed, and controlled, is exactly what makes his story so striking. Because in that old culture, chaos off the court and dominance on it weren't opposites. They coexisted.
Remember looking over at their whole dance team and they're like all in a row, but they looked haggard. They looked exhausted.
Throwing up at halftime, reeking of alcohol, and still coming back out to play NBA basketball. That's the level of chaos Richard Jefferson was describing when he opened up about the old league culture. In his telling, it wasn't about presenting a perfect image or hiding every flaw. It was about surviving the night, showing up when it mattered, and still delivering once the game started. To modern fans, it sounds impossible, almost unbelievable. But in that era, performance was the only real currency that mattered. If you could still produce under those conditions, nothing else was questioned. And that's exactly what makes these stories so shocking today.
Like, we are all crazy. We're all psychotic, right? The only way to be one of the 450 players in the world and stay there, you are physically gifted.
Rodman seems normal.
Well, you're physically gifted, and you're also a little...
This wasn't an anomaly. This was a culture. And nobody embodied that old NBA lifestyle more famously than Dennis Rodman. A 5-time NBA champion, 2 rings with the Detroit Pistons Bad Boys, and 3 more alongside Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in Chicago under Phil Jackson, Rodman wasn't just a rebound machine. He was the greatest rebounder in NBA history and a walking symbol of chaos meeting greatness. While others followed structure and discipline, Rodman lived on a completely different frequency, turning nightlife, travel, and pressure into something he thrived in rather than avoided. In a league where most players tried to stay balanced, Rodman proved you could live on the edge, embrace the madness, and still dominate the game at the highest level.
But yeah, your teammates know. There's guys that reek like alcohol.
Sure.
There's guys that are, throwing up at halftime. Like, the league has changed, but it used to be even more crazy.
For Dennis Rodman, the chaos wasn't occasional. It was routine. A 5-time NBA champion with the Pistons and the Bulls, Rodman built a reputation not just as the greatest rebounder in NBA history, but as a player who lived the most extreme lifestyle the league had ever seen. His nights often went from steakhouse dinners to strip clubs to late-night parties, sometimes consuming 10, 15, even 30 shots of Jägermeister before going to bed at 5 a.m. and still showing up for practice just hours later. Even teammates admitted it was impossible to keep up with him, with some saying it took nearly a week to recover from one night with Rodman, while he would repeat it the very next day. Before Game 6 of the 1997 NBA Finals, he reportedly spent the night at a Chicago nightclub going from sushi and steak bombs to non-stop techno music until morning, then went out and helped win a championship. But according to Rodman, what he lived wasn't an exception in the NBA at the time. It was just the most visible version of a culture where extreme lifestyles and elite performance coexisted in ways a modern league would never allow.
When you're 25, we could stay out till 5 a.m. and rage and then go score 30.
Groupie culture wasn't limited to major cities. It followed NBA players everywhere, creating a dating ecosystem around the league that most people outside of it could never fully understand. According to Gilbert Arenas, a 3-time NBA All-Star, the reality behind relationships in the NBA comes with unwritten rules that fans rarely see and almost never hear about directly. In his recent comments, he described how fame, travel, and constant attention from fans created a world where players operated under completely different social reality than normal life. What he revealed wasn't just about celebrity lifestyle. It was about how quickly boundaries blur when you're an NBA player moving from city to city, constantly surrounded by attention,